Let's talk about scaling meta ads. What's up, you guys? In today's video, I'm gonna give you a sneak peek into a presentation that I gave inside of my meta ads community all about scaling meta ads. In this presentation, I lay out all the tools that you need to know to successfully scale your brand this holiday season. We talk about all the different ways you can vertically scale, horizontally scale, and downscale, and all the things you need to consider as well. This presentation is very thorough, so I recommend you grab your notes and pay attention because this is super valuable stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So to start, when should we scale? Okay. I see a lot of people make mistakes where they scale way too fast. They see 1 day of good results or 2-3 days of good results, and then they scale and they break their campaign, and then they can't get it back. They struggle to relaunch, or if they downscale, it's just is never the same. So that's why I have these two criteria here. I don't ever scale. I personally follow this. I never really scale unless I meet both these criteria. So, and by the way, everything that I'm about to say applies to lead gen as well as e-commerce. So for me, I look for two things: average ROAS. So when I say average, I mean like 7-day average at least. But the longer, the better, really. Your average ROAS is well above your break even. So you need to know your break even ROAS. And then, or your CPA, your target cost per lead, or your target cost per purchase is well below target. So these are the two kind of indicators. And what we're looking for is consistency, average. I don't want to just make this decision off of 1 strong day or 2 strong days. No, it needs to be like 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, something like that. And then again, just to hammer that home, it's you want to see a consistent volume of sales or leads day after day. Okay, there's some exceptions to this rule. Like if maybe you're working in a high ticket space and you don't have like so much lead volume, well, then you got to really look at your like ROI, right? Are you, maybe you've spent 2K and you've made 20. Okay, well then, but you're not getting the consistent lead day after day. You can scale, right? You have room to scale. So that's the only like big exception in my opinion here. Okay, so here's the 3 main kind of categories of scaling. We have vertical scaling, horizontal scaling, and downscaling. Okay, so we're going to talk about each one of these. So vertical scaling. Who can tell me what vertical scaling is? I guess all your hands.
Okay, I'll answer. Vertical scaling is basically either your ABO, CBO, your campaign. You're basically scaling that campaign by a percentage.
Exactly. So that's just simply changing the budget on your campaign if it's at the campaign level or CBO, or increasing the ads the budget on the ad set level if it's ABO. Perfect. So when do we do this? We just talked about that. If we see these 2 criteria. Now, who knows what the 20% rule is? Sure, it's very popular, so you guys may have heard it. You guys can just speak if you know what it is.
20% rule is scaling your budget by 20%. So like if you have a budget of $50, just scale that up 20%.
Yeah. Do you know why it's like, why 20%? Why not 50? Why not 100?
Oh yeah. So you don't, they say, so you don't mess up your campaign and it doesn't send it back into a learning phase.
Exactly. That's right. So the 20% rule is scaling by 20% or less, so that you don't disturb the campaign or ad set and kick it back into learning. So the theory here is if you do more than 20%, you're going to kick it back into learning, which can ruin it, basically, can break it. Now, I want to talk to you guys briefly about the 20% rule because it's important. So I have this graphic here that I made, and this is how this kind of behaves. So if any of you guys have done the 20% rule, you've probably experienced this, where let's imagine we have a $100 budget, we're at a 2x ROAS. Let's say our break even is 1, so it's profitable here. We scale up to 120, we do the 20% rule, and the results hold. You're all excited, you do it again, it holds. So you do it again, and what happens? It completely breaks, right? And then it just continues to go down in terms of performance, and you try to downscale it, but you can never really recover it. So who have any of you guys experienced this before? It's pretty common. Well, now that you're aware of it, you'll see it. Basically, all ad campaigns or ad sets, they live on this bell curve, right? So there's always this point of collapse. It always exists. And the issue is we don't know where the point of collapse is. So let's say we start at 100, maybe it's at 170, maybe it's at 250, maybe it's at 400. But at some point, you're going to break it if you keep vertically scaling it. And this is especially true, like if you think about it, if you're starting at 100, this is the bell curve, and maybe the top of the point of collapse is, like I said, 200, 300, whatever. But if you start at tiny little budgets like $25 a day, maybe that point of collapse is at 50 or 100, right? So you have to keep that in mind as well. So yeah, for me, the vertically scaling can kind of be like, you're walking up towards a cliff. Maybe there's a pot of gold right at the edge of the cliff or something, and you're trying to get closer to it, and then eventually you just fall off the cliff because you don't know where the edge is. So these are just things you need to be aware of. Make sense? Okay. So my big beef with the 20% rule is that touching your campaign at all runs the risk of breaking it, whether it's 5%, 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%. It all runs a risk of breaking it. So if, in my opinion, if I'm going from 100 to 120, you have to ask yourself, is that worth it, right? Imagine we had an average cost per purchase or an average cost per lead of 50, okay? And I wanted to do this 20% rule. Well, what would happen here? I would be risking it, touching it, right? I'd go from 100 to 120, but I have an average cost per purchase of 50. So I'm not even giving myself enough to get another purchase or another lead, right? I'm going from 100 to 120. I need 50 more to get one more purchase or sale or lead. So what have I done? I've basically risked breaking it, and I've made the campaign more inefficient, right? I'm letting Meta spend more, and it's not going to be able to achieve another sale. So it's just going to spend more and give me nothing, basically. So you need to keep that in mind too. Like, what's your average cost per purchase? So what I would say is a better move in this case is to go from 100 to 150 to 50% scale, right? It's not following the 20% rule, but it's likely to be more efficient and more effective. Also, the 20% rule is really slow. Like going from 100 to 1,000 is going to take you forever versus maybe going from 100 to 200 to 400 to 800 to 1,000, right? That's only a few times versus if you do it 20% at a time, it's going to take you like a month. So my point here is like, if I'm going to take the risk anyways, why not get more for the risk I'm taking? So I personally do bigger percentages than the 20%. I do, if I'm following my criteria of high ROAS, consistent volume of sales, I'm doing 50% bumps, 100% bumps, 150% bumps, whatever, just kind of whatever I feel and whatever the ad account tends to react well to. So you have to pay attention to, if you do a 20% bump and it works, okay, great. Next time, try a 50% bump. If that works, keep doing 50. If it doesn't work, then maybe go back to 20. So you have to pick up on the patterns of like, okay, what does the ad account respond well to? Okay. So now that I'm getting into this, I'm realizing this is going to be a very dense call. I have a lot of information. So I hope you guys are taking notes. Any questions? So that's the 20% rule. That's why I personally prefer to do higher percent scales. We need to talk about the learning phase and learning limited. So nothing magical happens once you go from learning and to active or like exit the learning phase. There's no like performance improvement that occurs. So I'm not super concerned with getting kicked back into the learning phase. It's all about the results. It's all about what's my cost per lead, what's my cost per purchase, what's my ROAS. That's it, nothing else. Okay. So a couple other vertical scaling techniques that we have is the high performing method. So this is one that I posted about. Let me see if I have, I think I posted it on Reddit. One second. So if you guys have seen this, if you guys have ever seen in your ad account something that says high performing here, like this, I've done this quite a few times and it's worked for me quite, like I would say maybe 50–60% of the time. And so what it's saying here is based on modeling, you see here it says based on modeling, it recommends that you add budget and you'll see similar results. So I've experimented with this quite a lot. And what I was doing was, this is saying add $237 to whatever you currently have. So what I tend to do is I will do like, I'll add $200 or just something just below this. And it's worked quite well for me. And usually I don't listen to recommendations in the ads manager. They're usually bad. Like they usually give you worse results. So for example, this recommendation here says help improve your ad performance by selecting website and shop, which is funny because website and shop was deprecated. I think this month they took this feature away. But you can see based on our experiment, and if you actually hover over the little eye icon, you can see here it says the analysis results are based on 1 month of scaled experiment data where the conversion type was link clicks, landing page views, and offsite conversions. And in this case, I'm doing purchase conversion events. So it's like, why would I apply this recommendation that's based on link clicks from an experiment in 2021, right? So that's why I generally don't trust them. But the high performing method, if you hover over this little eye, it's actually based on like real machine learning data from active campaigns. So I trust it more. And in my experience, doing this has worked quite well. So basically, all I do is if you see this and you actually meet the criteria, so sometimes you'll see this badge and the campaign's not even doing that good. Okay, so that's you don't just do it if you see high performing. You have to meet that criteria of actual high performance. And then what I tend to do is scale it just below the maximum recommendation, and it tends to work. So that's the high performing method. Okay. My Canva, here it is. Cool, high performing method. So last two things on vertical scaling. Okay, so promotional campaigns. We treat evergreen campaigns, like campaigns that you're going to have running for the whole year, differently than promo campaigns. Okay, why? Evergreen campaigns, we try to treat, be very cautious with them, try not to break them, keep them. That's our base. That's the foundation of the ad account, right? So we try to protect those as much as we can. Promotional campaigns are different because it's, let's say Labor Day just passed. Maybe you're doing just a quick Labor Day sale for a week or whatever. We'll launch separate campaigns for those. And those we can scale up and down fairly aggressively based on the results, right? Because we know that we're going to close it eventually, right? We're going to close it after 7 days or whenever. So we're not super worried about breaking it per se. We can always just lower the budget if it's not working or close it if it's not working at all. So that's a little nuance there of evergreens versus promos. Promos, you could be more aggressive and scale up and down. Evergreens, you got to be more careful, especially with smaller ad accounts. Okay. And that brings me to surf scaling, which is something that you guys will likely do or should do during Black Friday if the results are there. Okay, so surf scaling is essentially just vertical scaling, doing what we're talking about here, but you do it like a day trader trades stocks, basically. So what's going to happen during, let's say, on Black Friday, you're going to see your ROASs are just going to increase significantly. Your cost per leads are going to drop. Basically, buyer intent is going to be much higher, so your results usually are much better. So that, like, this is a special period where you can kind of ride that or surf that demand and scale your promo campaigns. Okay, so we've talked about the Black Friday strategy, which is between, well, you should have been doing this for months, but basically between now and Black Friday, you're kind of stacking up evergreen campaigns, little by little, stacking up evergreen campaigns. And then you have a strong base going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And then once maybe a week before Black Friday or something like this, you launch your promo campaigns. And those are the ones that we surf scale. And so if you see, like, let's imagine your break even is 1x just for simplicity, and you see 5x, well, and you're spending $100 a day, well, maybe you can go right to $500 a day. Go from 100 to 500, boom, in one shot. And then you have to watch the ad account. You have to watch your back end, whatever you're using, Shopify or whatever platform, and see, like, am I getting that return? And so you can scale multiple times throughout the day if you're seeing, like, for example, you go from 100 to 500, you're at a 5x ROAS, and you actually see ROAS increase, which can happen. So now you're spending 500 and you're getting 6x. Well, then you do it again. You go from 500 to 1,000 in the same day. And then you watch, right? Maybe an hour later, you see, okay, my ROAS now is 4.5. Okay, it's dipped a little bit, but it's still super profitable. Go from 1,000 to 2,000. And that's surf scaling. And so what you have to do is just be aware that it's a temporary thing. You have to actually be watching it and, like, manipulating the budgets based on, like, hour to hour kind of data. So that's what we do. That's what we do every year on Black Friday. It's a very fun time of the year. It's very exciting. It's exhilarating. It can kind of feel like gambling, though. You know, you get that kind of rush. But I encourage you to just try to stay disciplined. And, you know, on one hand, like, I think the risk takers tend to win in this scenario. So you don't want to be too conservative. I usually feel like, damn, I didn't spend enough during Black Friday. So that's something to consider. But also, you don't want to be reckless, right? You don't want to just, like, put yourself in a hole when you should be making money. So that's vertical scaling. I'm going to pause there. Questions?
I have a question. It's not so much as how to vertical scale. It's like, what do you do afterwards? Like I would be more scared to, like, mess up the campaign, because I know for sure you'll have to scale back down, of course. But how would you go about that without killing the campaign?
Good question. So another thing to take into consideration when you're considering scaling vertically is, how many other campaigns or how many other ad sets do I have that are profitable, right? If I have a bunch that are all profitable, then I'm not so worried about breaking it, right? It's like, okay, if it fails, I'll downscale it, try to save it. But if it doesn't work and I have to close it, it's not the end of the world, because I have all these other campaigns that are profitable, right? But what do we do after we vertically scale? We watch it for 1 to 3 days. So you can see here. And what you need to do is observe how your campaign reacts, and how does your ad account as a whole react. Okay, so if you vertically scale and it holds, perfect. You just don't do anything. If results improve, then maybe that's Meta telling you need to scale again. If, let's say, that campaign alone starts to fail, then maybe you need to downscale. Or another thing that happens is the whole account just starts acting crazy and, like, failing, basically. Then you really need to step in and either downscale or close that campaign.
Yeah, and then okay, yeah, and then also before you start your campaigns, like, when should you set them out? Should it be like a week before Black Friday, or how would that go?
I feel like every year it's earlier and earlier. So, because, like, why do we launch? Okay, so we do the evergreens, right? We're building up our evergreens. That's our base. But now the promo campaigns, which is what you're talking about, when do we launch those? Every year people do it, like, before it was like a few days before, then it was a week before. I've seen people do like 2-3 weeks before. I've seen people do a month before. Why do they do this? Well, obviously you want to be the first to market, right? But also you get locked in at lower CPMs, lower market rates if you start earlier. And I found like starting earlier has its benefits. Like it's like optimized as you head into the actual sales period. So I think there is such a thing as too early personally. But yeah, I've seen people crush it starting like 3 weeks before. So there's no like perfect answer for that. It's just kind of like whenever you feel, whenever you're ready, and the earlier you start, the lower the CPMs will likely be. So maybe the buying intent won't be there. It's a countermeasure. Yeah.
Hey, Michael, when do you know when to horizontally scale and when to vertically scale? Like, what are the, like, is it if I want more profit, I vertically scale, and if I want more stability, I horizontally scale? Or am I thinking about that right? Or what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah, for sure. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there very soon. So I will make sure to answer that. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So that takes us to horizontally scaling. So that's the other type of scaling. So who can tell me what horizontally scaling is? Who knows?
Taking your winning ads and putting them in a different campaign so Meta can pick winners.
That is definitely one of them, and I'm actually going to add it to this list because I meant to. Or maybe not say winner. Yes, but what else? As a concept, like that, what you just described is a specific technique of horizontal scaling. What is horizontal scaling?
Is it
Is
not
it
just...
basically? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's just creating like a new CBO or ABO
Yes,
running
exactly.
alongside the already existing thing.
Exactly. So if we have, let's imagine we just have one campaign. If we were to increase the budget on that one campaign, that's vertically scaling. If we were to launch a new campaign, let's say at another $100 a day, that's horizontal scaling. You've gone from, so in the first example, let's say we go from 100 to 120, right? Just by vertically scaling. In the second example, we go from 100 to 200 by just launching another $100 campaign. That's horizontal scaling. Okay. So, yeah, pros and cons. So to your question, like when do you vertically scale? When do you horizontally scale? I would say horizontally scaling has its pros and cons. Pros of horizontal scaling is if you have something that's working, like a campaign that's working or an ad set that's working, you don't have to touch it. You just launch something new with new creatives, new offers, all this stuff that you see on the screen. And then you can basically not disturb the thing that's working and start a new thing over here. Another pro is that you can scale faster, right? You can, instead of having to do, if you're doing the 20% rule or whatever, you're going from 100 to 120, that's kind of slow. You can go from 100 to 200 just by launching something new, right? So that's the pro. So it's a little bit more risk averse. It's a little bit faster, but there's ad accounts that just don't react well to having multiple campaigns. And if you're at smaller budgets, it's not as efficient because you're splitting up your small budget multiple times, and that could cause problems. So if you need to keep a more consolidated structure because you're in smaller budgets, or your ad account just reacts better to vertically scaling, then do vertical. If you're scared of breaking something, and you have the budget to launch another campaign or ad set, then do horizontal. Ultimately, I do both. So that's kind of to this point right down here where I was like, some ad accounts react better to horizontal, some better to vertical. You got to figure out what the ad account likes. I know this sounds crazy, but you'll see that some ad accounts just don't work well with vertical scaling. Some just don't work well with horizontal. I always do a combination of both, but maybe I lean more towards vertical on one or horizontal on the other. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a lot more intuitive for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So when I launch new things, how can we how can we horizontally scale? New creatives, right? New offers, new creative formats. So we could, imagine we're just running a static image campaign. We can launch a vertical video campaign, for example, right? That's a way to scale. You can launch into new languages, new countries, or new locations. This is what I recommend. If you start duplicating the same thing over and over, this used to work. Okay, I used to do this. Actually, still do this in some using the crazy method, but basically, if you take one single ad set CBO, for example, that's working, and you duplicate it as is and launch another one, it can work, but it could also kind of like start cannibalizing itself, start competing with itself. And I've found that this behavior, like the competing with itself, is happening a lot more with the new Andromeda update, the new algorithm that they rolled out. So I'm not a huge fan of just straight up duplication anymore, but there's some nuance, so we'll talk about it. Winning campaigns. So you can take, like, pluck out, let's say you have like a bunch of test campaigns or a bunch of test ad sets. You can pluck out the ones that generated sales or had good ROAS, just take those post IDs, okay, and put those into a new campaign and run those. So that kind of goes against what I just said, but it can work. It's a little different because you're using post IDs, which have engagement, they're proven, so it has a better chance of working, but it still could potentially cannibalize your original. But worth a try. I do it all the time. I have a whole ad account that all I did was post IDs, and we were able to scale to like $1,500 a day recently, but then I sold them out of stock. Promo campaigns. That's another horizontal scaling method, right? So like what we were just talking about, we have our base of evergreens, we launch a promo, and you can launch that at 200, 300, 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever the number is, but that's a scale, right? Another technique to start scaling is start your tests at higher budgets. I've talked about this a lot in the group where so you guys know my testing strategy. If you guys have watched my testing videos, it's either single ad set CBOs or a testing ABO. And each new thing that you launch, each new ad set or each new campaign is a test, right? And if it works, you keep it. If it doesn't work, you optimize it down or close it. But everybody has a comfort zone in terms of their daily budget. For me, for a long time, it was $100 a day. I was scared to do anything more than that. I thought I was going to break it or I was going to lose too much money. And I have a different comfort zone for each ad account that I manage, right? Some people, it's still 100. Other people, it's 1,000. Other people, it's 3,000 a day, right? So you have to find what your comfort zone is. And then let's imagine it's $100 a day. You launch a new test. Great. And that works. And you're profitable. Well, whenever you're going to do the next test, maybe you try 150 a day or 200 a day, right? You still give it the amount of time that you normally do, 3 days, 4 days minimum, right? But if it works, that's your new floor. That's your new comfort zone. So now you can just start launching things at 200, 200, 200. And then eventually you try 300 or 500. And then eventually you try 1,000. And that's how you actually scale up fast, right? Is this risky? Yes. I mean, it's a high, everything that we do, everything we're talking about has risk, okay? But like I said, I think fortune favors the brave in this game. The more brave you are, I think the farther you're going to go. So again, don't be reckless, but understand that if you start pushing that test budget up 200, 300, 500, and it works, you're going to be, I mean, imagine you launch one $500 campaign, you go from whatever, 300 a day to now you're at 800 a day like this. So yeah, that's what I do. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of real examples here in just a minute of everything that I'm talking about. Questions about any of that?
Like, how do we keep them from really competing against each other? Like, what's our best strategy to make sure we're not cannibalizing one thing against the other for the same an e-commerce product essentially?
Yep, good question. So the easiest way.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I just want to say, I'm super appreciative. Everybody that's been following the channel, everybody that's been joining the group. It's been overwhelming, really. I've been meeting so many people that have watched all my YouTube videos, and they tell me, man, you've made such a huge impact on my business and on my life. So that's super rewarding for me. That's really why I do this, guys. So if you're interested in collaborating with me more closely, if you want to get on calls with me or get more one-on-one coaching from me, I highly recommend that you join my school community. It's currently at the lowest price that it will ever be, and I do plan on increasing the price as the group continues to grow, just to give the best service possible. So if you're watching this is your sign to join the community. We have a 7-day free trial and a 1-year money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk to join. And the strategies that you learn in the first week alone will pay back your membership fee many times over. So don't wait, join up now, and I'll see you on the inside. Take care.